Thanks so much for joining us today, Sam. For those tuning in, welcome to Place of Work. We are joined today by Samantha Allen, our Associate Director of Engineering Technology and Sustainability at M. Moser. We are going to discuss and hopefully answer the question of how do you lead on sustainability without breaking the bank? So, Sam, to get started, we talk a lot about this actually. Certifications like LEED, WELL, and BREEAM are considered the gold standards. But do you think they're always necessary?
So I don't think they're always necessary. I think they've been really great tools and are great tools for people who want to have that checklist, to have those benchmarks, to have international recognition as well of the certain things that they're achieving. But they're certainly not necessary to be sustainable and to achieve sustainability goals and targets.
Do you think that any of these standards might be missing something? I mean, we have evolved so much as an industry since they were originally introduced, and there's definitely some version updates that have occurred. But is there anything that you think that they need to target to bring them up to speed?
So I do think that the newer versions of the standard, so LEED V5, soon BREEAM V7, and also WELL V2 is updated each quarter. Those are now in the realm of where we kind of need them to be in terms of carbon. There's certainly been a massive focus around carbon accounting. We understand how important it is. The built environment is one of the greatest contributors to global warming. And so we need to understand how to really reduce that throughout embodied carbon and operational carbon as well. The standards have not done a traditionally good job of looking at that, but I think we're getting there with those.
And what are you most excited about in terms of that evolution?
I'm excited to see how people maybe shift their strategies and focus more on quantifiable metrics to really reduce our carbon. If we don't tackle the issues that we're facing in the built environment, we are not going to get to net zero. We are going to surpass the 2 degrees, 3 degrees targets and limitations that have been set, and it's going to be problematic. So we really do need to address that.
You know, it's so interesting that you do mention strategy, and I think what is so nice about these certifications is it lays out the checklist, but also there's a financial barrier some might assume. Do you think that that is true in the case of certification?
Yes, I think the certifications can be a financial barrier. I think some of the more expensive ones like WELL, just to get in the door with certification fees can be quite burdensome. There are issues that you might inherit from a base building when we're looking at tenancies as well, that in order to upgrade or in order to achieve the credits or the points that you're looking for can be quite costly. They can also be great areas for improvement. When we're targeting MEP, that's a really great way to look at operational carbon, for example. But certainly it can feel like you're buying points or credits for some projects, and that can be a non-starter for some organizations, especially if you're looking at a smaller organization or one that is maybe not doing a huge grand space. There's limitations.
Do you think that a company can still be seen as sustainable without going through the formal certification process?
Absolutely. I think if you are able to identify what is important to you as an organization in terms of your sustainability targets, we can help translate that into a design and into engineering solutions for the operations of the space. So I think when we look at that, we're looking at specific elements such as circular design. So really focusing in on how we reuse various elements, we refurbish furniture, really minimizing the impact on raw material extraction. Another area is to focus just on operational outcomes, and that's a very quantifiable thing that is easier to convince stakeholders within an organization to latch onto. energy consumption and energy efficiency is always a good one. Or you can target certain health and well-being metrics if you really want to focus more on the human sustainability side of things.
There is a financial barrier that some might assume. Do you think that that's the case in certification?
Yeah.
Solutions.
You can break it down.
Yeah.
I mean, these standards are mostly available online. LEED has now made their reference guides publicly available. So you can access them and you can still use them as frameworks and guidelines. But if going for the full certification isn't feasible or isn't financially viable, then you can still use those targets and use that methodology to ensure that you're actually achieving those sustainable outcomes. It's not just lip service or greenwashing.
So moving on to the next question, and you touched on this previously, I think. What is circular design and how can companies adopt it not only affordably, but also efficiently? I think that there is this assumption that you need a lot of time to really plan a circularity strategy. Do you really think that that's the case?
So, two questions in there. I think that you can make circular design more affordable, especially if you do look in perhaps more off the beaten path places. Unconventional places. There are brands out there that do sort of these really great recycled products that have great uniformity across their production line because they do it en masse, and they have fantastic sustainability credentials, but they are very expensive because of the processes that they go through. But if you look to secondhand or to different sources, such as what we did in our Amsterdam Living Lab, where we looked at our clients' spaces and storage that they were looking to get rid of, and use that as a warehouse for ourselves to select pieces from, then it can be a lot more affordable, and it was for us to do it that way. I think that the other part of what we talked about was the time that it takes. I think it gets faster the more you do it. Yeah. So you build those processes into place as you go. It's not something that happens overnight. There aren't really good playbooks yet, I would say. There are some out there for sure, but I do believe that you need to find what works best for you and build that into your own playbook and what makes sense.
And I think, especially if you do have a similar clientele where you can really work to gain momentum for what works with you, it's a lot easier to integrate, like you said.
Definitely. I think it takes a mind shift, and not just within the design team, not just within our engineering and our sustainability teams, but also within our supply chains. We had to do a lot of sort of education around how we built things for modularity, making sure that we weren't using any glues. Nothing is stuck down in that office, so that we can continue to use it, continue to adapt, continue to change that space as the needs of our business and our people in Amsterdam grows.
Definitely. So we've touched on ways to reduce both operational and embodied carbon. Between the two of them, which one do you think businesses should focus on first?
I think that we need to focus on operational. It is the largest contributor to carbon emissions in the built environment.
And it's the longest, it doesn't stop once the building's built.
Exactly. So that once you have the embodied makes up 20 to 30% of the carbon that we see in the built environment. The rest is operational. So you need to get your operational carbon in order to really get our greenhouse gas emissions down. We're not going to be able to do it any other way. However, I do think that there is a blind spot in the industry. Most of the calculations around embodied carbon have been on the base building alone and haven't really taken into account the amount of embodied carbon that goes into fit outs, which I think has been severely underestimated over the years.
Something we're trying to change.
Something we're trying to change. There's better data now than there was even 2 years ago, but it's still pretty sparse.
Yeah. I think that technology can really allow us to understand and calculate what our impact is. Especially with operational carbon, as you know, it doesn't stop like embodied carbon does once the building is built. We need to check in to ensure that within the life cycle of the space, it is being maintained and operating as efficiently as possible.
Especially with sort of MVAC or HVAC systems, you need to look at things like the refrigerant loss. Selecting low GWP refrigerants in the first place is always a good place to start. But in lieu of that, you need to understand what those impacts are over the course of a long term, and also looking at the maintenance, keeping them as long as you possibly can without the need to replace or overhaul a system.
What are your favorite ways that technology can help assist in that and make it more sustainable and accessible?
Yeah. So I think the technology to monitor our spaces is thankfully dropping. It used to be incredibly expensive, prohibitively so, for most people, most of our clients as well. Now that is significantly being reduced. So we're seeing greater adoption of things like circuit level monitoring. And that gives us better granularity over the space, and it allows us to see where patterns can fall so that we can find incremental solutions for better operational efficiency over time.
Do you think that you could share some examples of how you've implemented these technological solutions on any projects that you've worked on here at Moser?
So one of the biggest projects that we've implemented this on is HSBC's headquarters in New York. It's 250,000 square feet or around there. And there is circuit level monitoring, so all of the different systems are monitored. There's also things like reverberation sensors in the HVAC equipment to allow for predictive maintenance for when fans might be running slow, or we might need to upgrade or update or maintain those systems to keep them running efficiently and smoothly. The circuit level monitoring has yielded certain hotspots that were unexpected in that space. It's also the occupancy sensors have also demonstrated to us where space was not being utilized to its fullest potential. And so we were able to reallocate that to different sides of the business. That's more maybe of an economical efficiency question, but it still is about using the space more efficiently. And ultimately, the longer we stay in a space and the more we can use what we already have there, through small adjustments, changes, flexibility, modularity, the better.
In those examples that you shared, while some of those projects may be going for certification, there's nothing stopping them from implementing the solutions even without the certifications. That being said, do you think that there's any risk for bypassing the cert? How do you think companies will maintain their credibility?
So I think you need to find a way to measure through quantifiable metrics, qualitative in some cases as well, but it needs to be consistent and measurable. The certifications do a pretty good job of that. The LEED certification requires commissioning as well from a third party to ensure that the systems actually do meet the design and the intent for efficiency. And in WELL, you have the on-site performance testing to ensure that the air, water, acoustics, lighting, all of those really do meet the metrics that you've designed them for.
I think the key thing here, in lieu of the third-party verification, is ensuring that you are creating that trust and transparency.
I think being honest about where you might be falling short as well is a good way to do that. I think companies are scared to admit if their carbon is increasing, but it could be because they've actually increased their headcount by 100%.
Because business is going so well.
Because business is going so well and it's growing. So there are reasons behind that. But I think to be honest about where you are is really, really important. And that level of honesty and transparency increases trust, not just among your clients or your stakeholders, but it also increases trust among your employees, which I think is really valid and something that certainly millennials and Gen Z look for in a company, which is the majority of the workforce right now.
So how do you balance business priorities with sustainability goals? I mean, you mentioned larger headcount means more carbon emissions, which are a direct conflict in some cases. But how do you think companies should balance those?
I think you have to really do sort of an honest evaluation and maybe a workplace strategy program to figure out what your goals are, what the metrics, what the KPIs, what is success, what does that look like for you, and how does the success in terms of your business, but also in terms of your sustainability targets, how does that pair up? And report on that frequently.
So for companies that may just be starting out with their sustainability journey, what do you think that they should prioritize? Because the ESG umbrella is so large. Like, where do you think that they should begin?
Yeah, I think it's to embed it in their mission statement so that it becomes part of what the company does, and it becomes part of how the business is run, so that everyone is responsible for their own piece of it.
So thank you so much, Sam, for being here today and for helping to demystify the wonderful world of certifications, and also highlighting to us how creative and cost-effective strategies can deliver meaningful and impactful environmental solutions. Join us next time on Place of Work.